Hello, I'm Gus. I'd just like to speak to you today about a meeting that I attended here in Lanzarote, where I live. And for those of you who don't know me or didn't watch my previous video, I lived here and before I was a police officer in the Met, but I was dismissed because they discovered that I'd said something on Facebook outside work under a false name, uh, criticising police participation in gay pride parades, and that I had clicked like on Britain First and Traditional Britain, which are two right-wing groups. So for all you youngsters who think you're secure behind a false name online outside work in your own time, you might not be, because a so-called colleague found and grasped me, and the same could happen to you when someone recognises your voice. So just be aware, friends, that there is a limit to how far this anonymity can go, because the bigger you get, the more chance there is you will be doxed. Now, what I wanted to speak about today was a VOX meeting that we had here last Saturday on the seafront in Arrecife, and I turned up, and the leader of the party, Santiago Abascal, he came and he addressed us, and I came along with my Spanish flag, even though I'm not Spanish. I'm obviously a proud Briton, but I live in Spain, and I feel Spanish people should come first in Spain. And I'm not one of these immigrants who goes around demanding special rights or trying to restrict the free speech of any native to the land to which I've come. And obviously I don't scam off the benefit system or commit crime or build mosques or do any of the things that annoy us with regard to immigrants that come to Britain. And the Vox people there were very happy to receive me and let me join in their protest. And they gave me this lovely little sign to hold. And it's in Spanish. It says secure frontiers, secure districts. And obviously I held this, and a lot of other people held this. And then around midday, Senor Santiago Abascal, who's quite famous in Spain, he turned up. And he gave a beautiful speech, and it was really inspiring. And what it was, we just, on the seafront, they had a little platform. They had encouraged people to bring flags along, Spanish flags, and they had speakers playing Spanish patriotic songs and patriotic music, and the atmosphere was just beautiful. And I felt a real buzz from it. And I remember after it happened, everyone was on a high. And one of the speakers, one of the warm-up speakers, this Spanish lady, I saw her afterwards, and I said to her in Spanish, I said, that was a lovely speech. I said, I'm a foreigner, I'm English, and I understood every word of your oration. And she gave me a nice hug, and that was the friendly buzz, the lovely atmosphere, the comradeship that had been created by this nationalist meeting. So we didn't need a fancy hotel. We didn't need, fancy logos or a back room in a posh Marriott hotel under a false name. All we had was a platform on the seafront, a few speakers, and a few flags, just like your traditional BNP meeting or UKIP meeting or Swinton Circle or Traditional Britain, back room of a pub, few flags, maybe a nice bit of patriotic music, maybe a little refreshment buffet, and also meetings on street corners will also work very well. Now, what was good about this meeting was that it wasn't just Vox supporters and Vox members who came. There were old ladies who were walking by, and old couples. They stopped to see what was going on, and there was teenagers on their bikes who stopped by to see what was going on. And by the time Santiago Abascal arrived, there must have been around 200-300 people there. Now Mark, he's very against all this open work on the street because he's like, oh, it'll descend into violence. And the left, they did turn up, but the thing is, because we created such a good buzz, such a good atmosphere, there was so many people who come over to join in our meeting that we dwarfed them in numbers, and all they did was stand off to the side, cordoned off by a few police, and tried to shout over, which had very little effect. And at the end, they did try and run towards Senor Abascal's car when he left, and credit to the national police here, they're much better than the British police. They, rather than intervening or being like a left-wing strike force, they intervened to keep law and order, and they got their batons out and they made the left stay away from Senor Abascal's car, and they prevented any disorder or any fighting. And a couple of left-wingers were arrested, and I'm pleased to say not one VOX supporter misbehaved, not one VOX supporter was arrested. And that was how the whole thing went down. Now, I think Patriotic Alternative could learn an awful lot from how VOX did that meeting. I was inspired by it, and I know one of the things Mark has a bugbear about is flags, and I think the flags, they create a lovely sense of identity and solidarity, and they give the atmosphere a buzz. Now, I'm aware that because the left are very insidious, what they can do is they can use flags to undermine the feeling and introduce sneakily the liberal agenda. And this is what you get. I mean, sadly, you've had idiots who've gone to Trump rallies taking a rainbow flag. And now the thing is, I disagree with that, because at a Trump rally is a patriotic American rally. You should have an American flag. And there's no place for the rainbow flag there, because what that flag symbolises is that you agree with gay pride parades where men, simulate sex acts in broad daylight and go around in leather costumes, broad daylight in front of little children. You agree with gay adoption, you agree with gay marriage, with gay propaganda in schools. But what that rainbow flag also symbolises is that you cannot disagree with what that flag stands for. And the people who wave that flag, they don't just say, oh, you've got a right to a different opinion. They say anyone who has a different opinion, who is opposed to the things that flag represents, is not only wrong, they're a bad person. And I mean, I've had this argument on Twitter because I came up against this girl who thought she was a Trump supporter and a right winger, and she was going on about, oh, my brother, he was the first one to take a rainbow flag to my local Trump rally. And I said, well, what is he doing, taking a flag about his private sexual inclination along to a patriotic rally? The place for that flag is in a gay bar, not a patriotic right-wing rally, because that flag is intrinsically a liberal left-wing flag promoting a liberal left-wing anti-Christian agenda. And the reply I got, because she was one of these idiots who thinks, oh, if you've got a gay person in your family, you have to become a Stonewall representative, just like if you've got an ethnic person in your family, you supposedly have to become an advocate of multiculturalism, both of which are a fallacy. Because, I mean, I've got a sister-in-law who's Chinese. I've got an uncle now dead who was a gay. And I don't feel the need to shrill for either agenda just because I knew people who are, and I still know people who are perfectly decent, likeable people who I have good relations with, who are non-white or non-heterosexual. But this girl, she then said she wanted to beat me up, and what I did, I said to her, "You aren't a right winger. You're a liberal who doesn't like Islam. You know, because you've got no toleration of any different view." And I think, as well as the rainbow flag, I think they've also tried to do this with the EDL, with carrying along Israeli flags. Now, obviously, if you're an Israeli citizen, you've got a right to wave that flag at a patriotic demonstration in Israel. But it has no place in London, in a patriotic demonstration in London. And the people carrying those flags, I doubt they've even got a detailed opinion on whether Palestinians should be able to return to their homes before 1948 and the rights and wrongs of the Six-Day War and all the other issues in the Golan Heights. I doubt if you said to them, "What's your opinion on this, this and this, and the size of the West Bank and the border and the wall," I very much doubt they'd have a detailed opinion on any of that. And I'm not a scholar on any of that. But so what on earth they're carrying that flag for? Well, we know, because they're following the agenda of the left. And the reason they're walking along in an EDL demo with an Israeli flag is because they're scared of a left winger calling them a Nazi. Now, if you're scared of the names that a liberal will call you, I'm sorry, but you've got no place in our movement in the first place. Because if your whole outlook and concern is what liberals will say about you, well, I'm sorry, you best go away and come back when you don't care. Because you join the alt-right movement, you've got to be prepared to be slandered with these little cultural Marxist words, and you just got to say to them, "Call me a racist. I don't care. On a personal level, I'm polite and friendly to everyone who is so to me. But I'm not bothered if you want to call me that word because I believe there are differences between races, between nations. You call me that word because I don't really care." Now, so yes, I accept flags have to be controlled. So the only flag we want is the national flag. So I agree on that. The flag has to be controlled. But when you have the national flag, as we did on Saturday at that rally, you have a great atmosphere. It really helped with the buzz and the atmosphere. And this is what Mark wants to strip away. Now, it's not hard to just make a rule. You know, if you want to bring a flag, you bring the Union Jack to a PA event, and maybe the Scots flag, the English flag, the Welsh dragon, no other flag. Because obviously, you know, like last night at the proms years ago, you'd get the Liberals bringing the EU flags, and it undermines the buzz, the atmosphere. So, yeah, you do need to control the flags, but there's no need to ban them altogether, because they were a core part. If you look at the videos below this one on my channel, you can see all the people waving the flags, and it was a core part of creating that nationalist buzz, that atmosphere. And even I, as a non-Spaniard, as a foreigner, as an Englishman, I felt that buzz, being amongst people who were proud of their nation, their race, their ancestors, and it was beautiful. Now, what Abascal does, and see, this is the thing, he compromises on the right stuff, whereas Mark, he in Patriotic Alternative, he compromises on the image type stuff. Like the name of his show was This Week on the Alt-Right. Well, it made sense. That was who we were, the alt-right. That is the name of us in the ethno-nationalist movement, who believe in nations, who believe in, you know, a racial homeland for the European people, being, you know, and our inalienable right to it. That is the alt-right position. And when he changed it to Patriotic Weekly Review, really was making us seem like we're some sort of UKIP imitation act. But again, it's just a name. But it was something it undermined the buzz, who we were, the label. So what he does, Mark, he compromises on the minor stuff, on the sort of imagey stuff. He won't have the flags. He won't have the pub back room. He won't have the name the alt right in the title of his show. But then on the deeper, more ideological stuff, the stuff that does scare the normies off, he thinks he can be as hardcore as he likes. You know, now if you watch my other video, I've said about how this obsession with historical regimes and numbers who were killed in historical events, it's a dead end. It leads nowhere. Um, it won't help you in 2020. What Abascal does, he compromises on the right stuff. Now, I see online posts from VOX Party members. I'm friends with some of them on Instagram, and let me be frank. They don't cut. They're not like UKIP. I can see they're real nationalists, and not that they say anything particularly offensive or nasty, but I can see they're not a party of cucks. They're not a party of UKIP people who are scared and run a mile when they hear the word racist. But what Abascal does, he he's cunning on the core stuff. He's not explicit. Now he doesn't stand up and say, "I love General Franco. General Franco was great. The Franco dictatorship was Spain's best period." He will stand up and he will say things like, "Today's left-wing government in Spain is the worst government in 80 years." And that's subtle. It doesn't scare the normies off because he's not explicitly saying Viva Franco. He's saying this, left-wing socialist government, they're the worst government for 80 years. And he's sort of, subtly saying, he's throwing a bone to the right, but he's not scaring the normies off by saying, "Oh, bring back Franco." So this is what Mark's got to learn with the constant. He can't seem to avoid the. He's got to mention every now and again he's 6 million and was it 4 million and certain regimes and all the rest of it, and he cannot leave it alone. And and all it does, that stuff, it may give us a laugh and a giggle, but it scares normies off by the thousand, and what it does, we're playing into the enemy's hands because it allows the press to paint us as something we're not, as unreasonable, nasty, thuggish people. And this is what Mark's getting wrong. He's getting rid of the stuff that Abascal knows makes the atmosphere at the rally, the flag, being out in a park with a platform, the patriotic tunes on the speaker, the pub back room, all the things that give people a buzz. He's stripping this all away and hiding away in the back room of some Marriott hotel, booked under a false name, like the Scientologists or like some cult. And there's all these teenagers there who are scared to show their real face, and their only political activity is behind an avatar online. And it's not going to go anywhere. And to win the normies, you need these basic things. You need to say, "We are the alt-right. This is the name of my show, the alt-right. This is the flag of my ancestors. This is the flag I'm going to wave at a nationalist meeting. These are the patriotic tunes I'm going to play, and I'm going to play them loud. I'm going to have a meeting out in the park, and if the left come, I'm not scared, and I will respectfully request a police presence. I'll get permission beforehand, and all my supporters will behave themselves." And that's all you need to do. Or you can say, "I'm having a meeting in that local pub there, anyone in the town can come along. We're not going to hide away in some Marriott hotel, where it's, redirect. We have a meeting in that pub. There it is. There we are, out in the open, and that's what wins the normies over. Because you're not some sort of hidden secret society or little cult. And it's fun being a little cult where we all know each other, and I recognise all the names in Mark's chat every week because it's the same old people. But the fact is, 2,000 or 3,000 people watching PR, Patriotic Weekly Review every week. It's not going to get us through to the big time. And I think Ralph estimated there's, at the moment, if you go on the viewership of Patriotic Weekly Review and the people who've looked on the Patriotic Alternative website, there's maybe around 10,000 people who are following it online and maybe a few more thousand sympathisers. But when you get down to the numbers who are willing to show up and go out, you're getting even lower. You're getting 1,000, 2,000. Well, we had a meeting there on a little island, Lanzarote, on a seafront, and we got a sizable proportion of the population out. And they weren't all VOX Party members and sympathisers like myself. There was just normal people coming along, joining in, holding the signs. And you can see in the videos below this one, the enthusiasm, the buzz, the atmosphere. And Abascal is also very much for the unity of Spain and the sanctity of that unity and the Spanish flag. And Mark, he seems to want to compromise on Britishness. And England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, on their own, they're far less than they ever were. I mean, when Britain achieved its greatness, its empire, in the 18th and 19th century, when Britain was the most powerful nation on earth, this tiny little island, it was because we'd cooperated and created this Britishness. And now, Mark wants to abandon that because years ago, when he was canvassing for the BNP, some bloke took 10 minutes out of Emmerdale to say to Mark, "I'm not British, I'm English." Well, what Mark should have said is, "Sorry, sir, you are English, yes, but you're also British because that is your wider identity. You can have more than one identity. I'm a proud Englishman, I'm a proud Briton." And what Mark should have said to that bloke is, "Go and read a history book, sir." Now, I love books about the 18th century, and a book here I recommend. It's about the wreck of the Medusa by Alexander McKee. And the Medusa was a French ship, and when it got wrecked, there was chaos, and everything went wrong, and people ended up on a life raft, and it was terrible, and it was a scandal throughout Europe, and there was cannibalism and all the rest of it. Well, around that same period, in 1817, there was a British ship that was wrecked off the coast of Java, the Alceste, HMS Alceste, in 1817. And the British ship, everything was done in an orderly manner. The ship was evacuated. The crew and the passengers went to an island nearby on the coast of Java. I think modern day Indonesia it would be, or maybe the Philippines. So they went to this coast, and everything was organised, and there was no cannibalism and fighting and rioting, and good old British discipline. And they sent off a boat to get aid, and Captain Murray Maxwell, who was a Scotsman, he noted how there was a tribe of potential cannibals who came out of the jungle and raided the wreck of the ship, and they threatened the camp of the shipwrecked people. And they built a little stockade on a hill using wreckage from the ship, and prepared to defend themselves with their muskets and their swords. and that night, before facing possible attack, Captain Murray Maxwell made a speech to his shipwrecked, hungry British crew. And he said, "This night let every man be on his alert, and should these barbarians this night attempt our hill, I trust we shall convince them that they are dealing with Britons." Now, you read this story, my friends, in Alexander McKee's Wreck of the Medusa. There they are, British people back in the days of empire, stranded, hungry, shipwrecked, and they're not abandoning their British identity, they're clinging to it. And after that, and that night, because those natives on that island saw they were so proud and so well organised, they didn't even dare attack them. And a relief boat came, and the crew of HMS Alceste and Captain Murray Maxwell, they were all rescued. And it was because they'd had that pride in their Britishness, and that pride and that sense of purpose and that discipline. And this is what you do. You cling to your principles. You don't abandon them. You don't abandon Britishness because some bloke has said he's not British, he's English. You tell him, go and read a book. Go and read some of the history of what great men have done on behalf of Britain and the British Empire. Now, what Mark might now say is that, oh, I'm being very UKIP-y, and I'm not. I agree that the British Empire is gone, but it doesn't mean we abandon this concept. We, just like those shipwrecked people in 1817, we cling to the concept of Britishness in this hard time. We don't abandon it. We don't abandon the flag to try and impress a few media organisations. And indeed, abandoning the flag takes the buzz out of the nationalist rally, as I learnt last Saturday. But the thing is, what Santiago Abascal does is he doesn't do a Nigel Farage. He doesn't punch right. And this is, like Nigel Farage, when he says about people who opposed Islam, came into his party and he called them crazies and nutcases and fanatics, and just to impress his liberal friends and keep his liberal job on LBC, and which he eventually lost anyway. So it's a losing game. You try and play up to the Liberals, you try and punch right, eventually they come for you. And Abascal, he's cunning. He doesn't explicitly say about extreme things or dispute irrelevant historical events like Mark seems to want to do, but at the same time he doesn't punch right. Now, there was on the news, I don't know if any of you have heard of it, there was on the news here in Spain the other day, a few ex-military people online who are so fed up with the socialist government that they started talking about a coup, like Colonel Antonio Tejero did an attempted coup to preserve Francoism in 1981. And so obviously, because there has been an attempted coup before, these ex-military people talking about a coup against a socialist government, it created a scandal here in Spain, which was on the news. Now, when they asked Santiago Abascal about this chatter online of these ex-military people, these retired military men saying about a coup against the socialist government, they were trying to get Abascal to condemn them, and sell them out and punch right. But what Abascal did, he was very cunning. He said, no, go and look at the talk of the ETA supporters online. Go and look at the talk of the Catalan independence movement online. Go and look at the talk of the Marxists, of the liberals online, of the militant LGBT people online. See how extreme that is. So this is the thing. You can be cunning with your principles and appeal to normies without punching right. And after he did the rally in Lanzarote, he went north, and I think a couple of days later he did a rally in Barcelona, and a few people turned up who were, hardcore extreme, and one of them had a flag with SS runes on. Now, obviously the press, the mainstream press, straight away they'll exaggerate that and make that a massive thing, like there was hundreds of people there with SS flags, which there weren't. There was one person turned up with one, and Abascal didn't even comment on it. He just ignored it, and the VOX Party just said that person isn't connected with us. They didn't condemn him. They didn't sell him out. They didn't do an Anne-Marie Waters, he's a bad person and all this. They just said, look, he's not connected with us. And that's all you have to do. You can be sensible. You can say, look, that's not our policy. That's not connected to us. But we believe in free speech. And so you can be cunning, appeal to normies without punching right, Mark. Laura, this is what I try and say to you. And what Abascal also does is he plays serious politics. He's prepared to sit down and cooperate with people who he doesn't like personally. And this is the difference between an internet cult of e-celebs and a serious political movement, where you sit down, you cooperate with people who you might not get on with personally, who you might not like personally, but you cooperate with them for the greater good of the movement. Now, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, there was a censure motion that Abascal tried to launch in the Parliament. Now, the main Conservative party here, the Partido Popular, he held open the door. He said, do you want to support me in this censure motion against the socialists? Even though many in the Partido Popular, the mainstream Conservatives, they insult him personally, they can't stand him, they call him a fascist, they call him this, they call him that. But he held the door open. He said, I'm doing this motion against the socialists, do you want to join me? And that made the mainstream Conservatives look bad. That didn't make Abascal look bad. Now, I may not be 100% accurate on what has happened here, but I mean, I speak Spanish, but I'm not fluent. But I think that is more or less what happened. He held the door open, and it was up to Partido Popular to turn him away. And then Abascal, he was the champion of the right, and the mainstream Conservatives, they were the opportunist sellouts. Now, what Mark could do, Mark could also hold the door open. He could say to Paul Golding in Britain First, come on my show, come on Patriotic Weekly Review, debate me, cooperate with me. Even if you disagree with me, debate me. And if he holds that door open, then it's Paul Golding, Britain First, to look bad. He could do the same thing with Nick Griffin, with Jim Dowson and that Knights Templar thing they've got going on with selling their Bibles and their swords. I mean, they seem good, patriotic Christian people. They've probably got 90% or 95% in common with Patriotic Alternative supporters. Mark could hold the door open. He could say to Nick Griffin, I don't like you personally. We've got a past. But come on my show. Let's think of the movement. Let's think of the greater good. Let's talk. Or if we disagree, let's debate. But Mark won't do that. He'd rather be in the back room of a hotel with his adoring little, teenage followers who are all going to just tell him and Laura how brilliant they are. But sadly, that's not the thing which launches growth or progress. So this is the thing. What Santiago Abascal has got right, what the VOX Party has got right, is that they've compromised on a lot of the core ideological stuff, and they haven't thrown away the surface stuff which Mark seems to want to throw away, the backroom pub, the flags, the patriotic speakers playing on the patriotic songs playing on the speaker. They've compromised on the core principles. They're not going on JQ, which is one of many issues. Look at my other video. You obsess on this one issue. All you're doing is turning people off, allowing yourself to be compared to people in 1933, and it's just, it won't sell, and it's silly. And as I've said before, yes, it is an issue in terms of advertising and things like that, and a large proportion of them being left wing, but many half Jewish people don't even consider themselves Jewish. So it may even be a declining issue, and we just need to take on every liberal. We don't need to say this one is Jewish, this one isn't. Just take on every liberal. And when you obsess over issues like this, all you're doing is you're reducing yourself to a cult in the back room of a Marriott hotel. And what you've got to do, you've got to put yourself in a position where you've compromised on some of this core stuff, some of the ideological stuff, where you can go to the seafront like I did last Saturday, where you can have a massive meeting where members of the public come along, they feel comfortable, they feel happy to join in. It's not just people with skinheads or people with tattoos, and a great atmosphere is created. And I think this is maybe part of the limit online of when people create these videos and they're anonymous and they've got all these people watching and liking, and maybe it feeds their ego. And I mean, the ones who are not even showing their face, like the Ayatollah, as soon as you disagree with them, they can't stand it because they're not used to it, because they're not out there under their own name in the cut and thrust of politics, debating, disagreeing, agreeing. And this is why these anonymous online channels, there's only so far you can go with it. There comes a point, I realise, if someone's got a family, a mortgage, you've got to maybe keep yourself secret, but there's a limit to how far you can go. And as my situation shows, there comes a day when you can be uncovered anyway. So there comes a day when you've got to stand up, show your face and say, this is what I believe in, and I'm proud of these beliefs. And the fact is, someone like myself who doesn't go down the Nazi LARPing route or the JQ obsessing route, I'm prepared to show my face. And it says a lot that a lot of the people who go down this hardcore route, they're not prepared to show their face. So who's got the stronger argument? Now, as I've said before, I'm just one foot soldier in the movement. I'm just one humble foot soldier, and I've been to all the meetings, Swinton Circle, Traditional Britain, Conservative Party back in the 90s, UKIP, BNP. I've leafleted for the BNP. I've been to Days of Action, all of it, and you see things, you see what works and what doesn't. And I think, Mark, you've got an awful lot to learn from someone like Santiago Abascal, and you've got to look at him and learn what he's compromised on and what he hasn't. And Santiago Abascal is making the right compromises. He's compromising on the right stuff so he doesn't scare off normies, the core ideological stuff, but he's not throwing away the surface stuff, the flags, the speakers, the back room of the pub, the platform in the park. He's not throwing that away, because that's what creates the buzz, creates the atmosphere. And you've got to learn, Mark and Laura, to compromise on the right stuff, not the wrong stuff. And I think you need to look here in Spain at the VOX Party and see what they've done. And I feel you've got a lot to learn from them. And you might say to me, oh, they're just a version of UKIP. Well, they're not. I've spoken to a lot of their supporters. They're a proper nationalist party, but they know the importance of presentation on what's sellable and what isn't. Now, whether Mark and Laura listen to me, I doubt it's, but I'm just one individual. But the fact is, they're not listening to other critics either. It's not just whether they listen to me as one individual foot soldier, it's anyone who disagrees with them seems to be ghosted. And, a political party should be a broad range of opinion. And even someone as strong-willed as Margaret Thatcher, in her first cabinet, she had a lot of people who disagreed with her. And she probably learnt from those people. And this is the thing. Mark and Laura, they need to ask themselves: are we playing serious politics or are we doing an internet cult? And in serious politics, you leave the door open to people you disagree with, or even people you personally dislike, for the greater good. Now, just to end it, I mean, how much good me speaking or other speakers who I admire, like On the Offensive or Ralph Wright Reaction or Unwashed or Dangerfield or Ayatollah, all these good people speaking, how much good it will do, we don't know. But I read Geoffrey Ham's book, and Geoffrey Ham was an aide to Oswald Mosley, and he said at the end, he said about he might not have lived to see the nationalist breakthrough, and Mosley didn't live to see it either. But he's convinced one day it will happen. And he said, on the last page, he says here, Geoffrey Ham, he says, one thing I can say is that I have tried. And this is what all right-wingers ultimately, we need to be able to say, I've tried. And, if you are trying your best, you put the movement first. You put the greater good first. Because at the end of the day, whether we ultimately succeed or ultimately fail, we need to be able to look back and say, I've tried. And I think Patriotic Alternative can learn a lot from the VOX Party. So even if they don't succeed, they can say, yes, we compromised. Yes, we held that door open to people we personally dislike for the greater good. Yes, we tried to appeal to the normie millions. And if they turn their backs on us, it's not our fault because we tried. And that's what we need to be able to say. And that's why Patriotic Alternative needs to learn from the VOX Party and Santiago Abascal. So we can sit back and say, even if we don't succeed, that we tried. Thank you.